end of the book. It didn't take long to clean up the asylum. The incinerator came in quite handy for the disposal of the bodies, and then the basement was boarded up. No one ever need go there again. The funny thing is that we thought we had eradicated our collective enemies, but the truth is that we never will. We had been imprisoned and tortured for so long that we didn't know what life was without it anymore. We hadn't felt ourselves change, but gradually we had become accustomed to such monstrosities that now that we were free, we felt oddly drawn to them. Consider the leeches as an example. Many of us had made peace with our little blood-sucking companions so long ago that we continued to apply leeches to ourselves and each other, even when we didn't have to anymore. They were our friends, after all. They had names and voices, and they must be fed. All of the cruelty had gone out of it, but we bound each other in manacles and straight waistcoats, and performed imaginary operations on each other. It had become a game to us. We held contests to see who could get out of their restraints the quickest. There were wheelchair races down the corridors. The plague rats remained a part of everything we did, with Sir Edward always keeping his protective eye over us. They sat with us at tea, drinking from our cups, nibbling the crumpets and the scones and tea cakes, for we had such things now. In fact, we had every material thing that we could wish for, and more besides. Under the asylum's old regime, our tyrant jailers had absconded our belongings immediately upon our arrival, and had sold some of our goods and spent some of our money, but there remained rooms full of treasures built up over the years, more than we needed to live as frivolously as we pleased for the rest of our days. Of course, I had arrived with no belongings, but many of the girls had been deposited here by wealthy families who, convinced through their own ignorance, in addition to the pressures of society's ignorance, that their wards were mad, left them, yes, but left them with full purses after having been given to think that the girls would be well cared for, and better cared for the more valuables they brought with them. The families believed it, and had continued to send money, if only to ease their own consciences. The asylum had been governed by masters of deception, but it could not be denied that they preyed on those who were willing to be deceived, who could be so easily led into doing evil. Even worse, those that had a girl committed never knew what wrong they had done, because no one ever told them. No one was ever informed when a girl died, and very few returned or even wrote to check on her. The few that did were merely sent a brief notice stating that the girl had only just passed away, and were placated with a death certificate stating the date and cause of death, always false, with the cause invariably being listed as pneumonia, as well as a list of all the beneficial medications and treatments that had been administered at the time in order to do everything possible for the poor girl. In reality, of course, the medications were never given. Those that were had only been part of medical experiments and never to treat any actually existing condition. If a girl had happened to actually develop pneumonia, which was frequent due to the baths and the eternal cold, she would be disposed of immediately for fear that the staff and the entire institution would become infected. Besides ordering goods by post, we rarely now had nor needed direct communication with the world outside. It was essential to our survival that no one knew of what had taken place at the asylum. We now governed ourselves, and we would never again submit to anyone. It was decided that if the world never cared to know about the violence inflicted upon us, then the world ought not care to know about the violence that we had finally inflicted back. There is but one thing that weighs heavy on my mind, and this is only because it is the one thing I cannot share. Just before dawn, on the day after the Tea Party massacre, which we now only refer to as the Tea Party, I had passed the operating theater where we had left Dr. Greasley dead on the table and found the table empty. I ran to the window just in time to see a figure hunched over and clearly injured, running quickly, despite a severe limp, through the mist and towards the naked woods behind the asylum. I knew that he would most likely die outside in the cold, and that if he should live, he would not be back. Still, I did take care to implement a system of traps and alarms, which I had intended to do anyway, and now I am not afraid. We had decided from the very beginning that we would continue to accept new inmates if they were brought here as a last resort and with nowhere else to go. In the event that a new girl was as unmad as most of us were, then she might prove a pleasant addition to our strange society. And if the girl truly was mad and in need of serious care and rehabilitation, then perhaps we could make the asylum for wayward Victorian girls what it was always meant to have been, an asylum, and help her. And this is how Juhi came back into my life. She arrived one morning in the hansom of a police constable who had found her walking backwards on a railroad track just outside the city. When she arrived, she refused to speak, and was so incoherent that she did not recognize me, her oldest and dearest friend. As the months passed, however, she transformed gradually into her former self, and even better. We all of us have our battle scars, and she has not yet been able to tell me exactly what happened during those years that we were separated. But someday, perhaps, I will know the story, and in truth, it doesn't matter. We were learning to live again, and for most of us, it was for the first time. When a new inmate arrived, one of us would pretend to be Madame Mornington for the benefit of her guardians, and put on the heavy black gown, our noses shoved up into the air. Once the doors closed, however, everything was different. The first girl I had admitted was a quiet little thing prone to bouts of melancholia. Her maniacally religious uncle had left her on the asylum's doorstep without so much as a note, and so I whisked the poor creature around our labyrinth of rooms with Basil on my shoulder, through the kitchen where we nabbed a tart, and past the drawing room where a concert was in progress. Sir Edward was leading a group of young rats in a recitation of some poem by Browning. Then, from upstairs, there was a scream, and the new inmate's eyes widened. Can we all scream? 1, 2, 3. Ah! The new electroshock machine, I said. You'll learn to love it. What we are building is, I think, a self-sufficient community like nothing that has ever existed before. It could perhaps have been a bizarre but beautiful social experiment on what might happen if women were ever made mistresses of their own lives. The ultimate result of the experiment remains to be seen, but I believe we are creating something truly remarkable. Yet, despite our best efforts, I do not suppose that we will ever know happiness as other people do, people who have never suffered as we have. I think that the reason we indulge in our luxuries, our tea parties and dances and music and all things beautiful and very grand, is to make up for the reality that no matter how many years shall pass, there will never be enough time in our lives to fill the cavern that has been made inside of us when we first passed through these doors, never to come out again. Revenge may be the best revenge, but slaying your enemy does not give you back what they stole from you. There is not enough revenge in the world for that. Still, we do our best to live as joyfully as we can, and I dare say we have great fun in the attempt. We have recreated the asylum in every aspect, from the kitchen to the cells, and even to the flat rooftop over the wards, where we often gather for tea and dancing and to look down upon the city of London when the sun sets. I don't know that our tastes in decor would please the collective eye of civilized society, but I suspect it would not. Our sense of aesthetic has come to lean heavily towards the macabre, but not because we mean it to. It is simply that the bits of us that measure what is beautiful, what is ugly, what is comic, and what is frightening had been tossed up into the air when we were shut away from the world,